In our previous lesson, we looked at how to add and subtract polynomials, but what happens if we want to multiply polynomials? So before we get started with our lesson, let's take a look at this rectangle that is pictured on the screen. So the dimensions or the side lengths for the rectangle are listed as 4x plus 2 for this bottom side and 5 for this right-hand side. So if we are asked to write a simplified expression for the area of this rectangle, remember that the formula to find area of a rectangle is length times width. So I'm going to take the dimensions and I'm going to multiply them together. So I have a 5 multiplied by 4x plus 2. So there has to be a way for me to take both of these expressions or both of these terms and multiply them together. And so that's what we're going to focus on in today's lesson. We can use what's called the distributive property to multiply a monomial. So remember, a monomial is just one term. And we can take this monomial and multiply it with another expression. So something like 4x plus 2. So what exactly is the distributive property? The distributive property tells us that we can take the number or term in front of the bracket and multiply it one at a time with whatever is inside the bracket. And so essentially what we're doing is we're getting rid of the brackets by performing this multiplication. So let's take a look at the expression that we just wrote for the area of our rectangle, 5 times 4x plus 2. So if I wanted to distribute, I would take 5 and I would multiply it with 4x. So 5 times 4x is 20x. So 5 times 4 is 20, and the x is just going to stay attached to that 20. Okay, then we're going to go back, and we're going to do 5 multiplied by positive 2. So 5 multiplied by positive 2 is a positive 10. So our simplified expression for the area of that rectangle is 20x plus 10. So that's essentially what the distributive property is, taking the term in front of the bracket and multiplying it with everything inside the bracket. So let's keep practicing, and we're going to take a look at these practice questions here. The instructions are saying that we need to expand and simplify the following. So expanding means we're going to perform the distributive property and do that multiplication. Simplifying means once you perform the multiplication, you want to make sure that if there are any like terms, you put them together. And you're not always going to have like terms that you can put together. Sometimes it's possible that you just do the multiplication and you stop once you're done. So with the first question, we're going to start with 2 multiplied by 5x. So 2 multiplied by 5 is 10. And then there's an x there, so we're just going to attach it to the 10. And then we move on to the next term. It's going to be 2 multiplied by positive 3. 2 multiplied by 3 is positive 6. So now, can we put 10x and 6 together? So can we add them together? And the answer is no. These are not like terms. This is a term with a variable or a letter attached to it. This is just a plain 6, no letters attached to it. So these are not like terms, and so this is as far as we can take our answer. So our answer is 10x plus 6. All right, on to the next one. Now the next one is negative 2 multiplied into 7x take away 4. So same thing, same rules apply, but we just have a couple of different signs to work with this time. So we just have to be careful with that. We're going to start with negative 2 multiplied by 7x. So negative 2 multiplied by 7 is negative 14. And we have an x, so we're going to attach that. And then we move on to the next set. Negative 2 multiplied by negative 4. So remember your rules for integers and the signs. I'm just going to write them over here on the side. So a positive multiplied by a positive will give you a positive. A negative multiplied by a negative also gives you a positive. A positive and a negative make a negative. And a negative and a positive, doesn't matter about the order, still gives you a negative. So in our situation, we have -2 multiplied by -4. So two negatives make a positive. So -2 times -4 is actually a +8. So our final answer is -14x plus 8. Are these like terms? Can we add these two things together? And again, the answer is no. This is a term with an x. This is just a plain number 8. They are not like terms, so this is going to be our final answer. It's also possible to perform the distributive property with terms that are a little bit longer. So if you notice inside the bracket, this time we have a trinomial. There are 3 terms inside the bracket, and it's the same thing. We just have to perform the multiplication one step at a time. So we're going to start with -3 multiplied by 2x squared. So -3 times 2 is -6. And you're just going to attach the x squared. There's nothing that you can do with the x squared, so you're just going to recopy it. All right, then we're going to hit the next one. -3 multiplied by -5x. So let's just worry about the numbers. -3 times -5 is a +15. And we have the x attached to the 5, so you should also have an x attached to your answer of 15. And then we're going to go to the last one, -3 multiplied by +4. -3 times +4 is -12. All right, so now if we look at our answer, are there any like terms here that can be put together? And the answer to that is no. You have a term that is an x squared, you have a term that's just an x, and you have a term that's just a plain number. None of these are like terms, so you shouldn't be adding or subtracting any of these together. So your final answer is -6x squared plus 15x, take away 12. All right, so let's make it a little bit more challenging. This time I have 2 sets of brackets. So we're going to have to perform the distributive property 2 times. However, you're not just going to multiply everything together. You have 2 sets. So we have a 2 that's going to get multiplied into its bracket. And we have a 3 that's going to get multiplied into this second bracket. So you're going to perform them separately, but then we are going to have to remember that we can collect like terms. So this is a question where there will be some like terms that we can put together in the end. So let's just start by doing the multiplication. All right, so we're going to start with 2 times 6m. 2 times 6m is 12m. So 2 times 6 is 12, and we're just going to keep the same m attached. And then we have 2 multiplied by -3. 2 times -3 is -6. So we've distributed the first set, or the first bracket. Now we're going to move on to the second set, or the second bracket. So here, this would read as 3 times 16. 3 times 16 is 18, and that's a positive number, so it's going to be a plus sign, or a positive 48. And then we have 3 times 4m, and that's going to give us a positive, or plus 12m. 3 times 4 is 12, and there's an m attached, so we also need to make sure that we attach an m with our 12. All right, so now if we take a look at what we've written, there are some like terms here. We have one term here with an m, and we have another term with an m, and we have 2 numbers that are just plain numbers, no letters or variables attached to them. So we're going to rewrite the next line by collecting or grouping together the like terms. So I have a 12m, and I have another 12m. So I'm going to put those together. And then I'm just going to follow it with the plain numbers. And remember to keep the signs attached to the numbers that they are attached to. So this is a -6 or a -6. So the minus has to travel with the 6. Once you've collected like terms, you are just going to perform the math. So we have 12m plus 12m, which is 24m. Remember, you're just adding together the numbers. So 12 plus 12 is 24. Do not add together or change the letters. You're just going to recopy it. So 12m plus 12m, 24m. And then we have the plain numbers. So those are going to be put together. So this reads as -6 plus 48. And -6 plus 48 is a positive 42. So our final answer would be 24m plus 42. Let's take a look now at performing the distributive property, but this time we're going to be dealing with expressions or polynomials that have exponents. And so when we distribute or multiply with exponents, you need to remember your exponent laws that we learned earlier on in Unit 1. So the distributive property still functions the same way. So here's our question: x multiplied by x squared minus 3. So the rule for distributive property says that we need to take this x and multiply it into the bracket. So the first multiplication reads as x multiplied by x squared. Now, what's the rule for multiplying variables and exponents? So the rule for multiplication is that you are going to add together the exponents. Remember that if you don't see an exponent, that means that there is still a 1 there. So this is not just x, it's actually x to the exponent 1. But if you had to add together these exponents, you would be adding 1 plus 2. So x multiplied by x squared is actually x cubed. Remember, you're adding the exponents together. So we're going to put an equal sign and we're going to write x cubed. And then we move on to the next multiplication. So that would be x multiplied by -3. That is going to be -3x. Remember that x is the same as saying 1x. So really we're saying 1x multiplied by -3. 1 times -3 is -3. The x is still attached, so you're going to bring it down or recopy it. Let's try some practice questions so that we make sure that we actually understand and get the hang of doing this. So we've got x multiplied by x minus 3. So we're going to start by multiplying x times x. So remember, this is the same thing as saying x to the 1 multiplied by x to the 1. And the rule for multiplication of exponents is that you can actually just add together the exponents. So 1 plus 1 would be 2. So x times x is actually x squared. So we're going to put an equal sign, and we're going to put in x squared. And then we're going to move on to the next multiplication, which is x times -3, and that would give us -3x. Are these terms like terms? Can we subtract them from each other? And the answer is no. X squared is not the same as a term with just an x. So these are not like terms. You cannot subtract them from each other. So your final answer is x squared minus 3x. All right, now it's your turn to give it a try. Try this question. -x multiplied by 7x take away 4. Pause the video, try to see if you can figure out the answer, and when you're ready to see the solution, hit play. So to get the answer, our first step is to take -x and multiply it into 7x. Now, in case you've forgotten, or if you need a reminder, remember that there is a 1 attached to the x. We don't explicitly see it, but we always have to remember that it is there. So when you're multiplying, you're actually saying negative 1x multiplied by 7x. So if we want to take it step by step, we could just start with the numbers. Negative 1 multiplied by 7 is negative 7. And x multiplied by x, we just did that in example A, x times x is x squared. Remember that you're adding the exponents. So x1 times x1 is x squared. All right, now we're going to hit the next term. So negative 1x multiplied by negative 4. So negative 1 times negative 4 is a positive 4. Remember, two negatives make a positive. But don't forget that that x is still there. It's attached to that negative 1, so you also need to carry that down and attach it to your 4. X squared and x, these are not like terms, so you can't put these two things together. So your final answer is going to be negative 7x squared plus 4x. All right, now give this question a try. Negative 3x multiplied by 2x squared minus 5x plus 4. So it's the same idea, you're just multiplying now 3 times. So you've got 3 different multiplications that you have to perform in order to get your final answer. So pause the video, try it on your own, and then come back to see the full solution. All right, so we're going to start off by taking negative 3x and multiplying it into 2x squared. So rather than overwhelming ourselves, let's just take it one piece at a time. So let's just start with the numbers. Negative 3 multiplied by 2. Negative 3 multiplied by 2 is negative 6. Now we can move on to the letters. X multiplied by x squared. Remember, the rule is that you need to add the exponents. So this is really x1, and you're multiplying it with x squared. So 1 plus 2 would actually give you x cubed. All right, now let's move on to the second set. So it's going to be negative 3x multiplied by negative 5x. So again, let's just worry about the numbers first. Negative 3 multiplied by negative 5. That would actually give us a positive 15. Remember, 2 negatives make a positive, and 3 times 5 is 15. And now we're going to do the letters. So this is x multiplied by another x. So x times x gives us x squared. All right, and then we've got one more set, which is negative 3x times 4. So negative 3x times 4 is simply going to be negative 12x. When we look at what we've written, are any of these terms like terms? And the answer to that is no. X cubed is not the same as x squared, which is not the same as x. These are 3 completely different variables, so you cannot put any of them together. So this would be our final answer. All right, question D is a little bit of a tricky one. We've got 3m times m minus 5, take away 2m squared minus m. So this is a question where you need to perform 2 different sets or 2 different types of distributive property. So you've got the 3m, which is going to get multiplied into its bracket. But then when you take a look at the second set, you've got a negative sign in front of a bracket. Now, remember in math, if you don't see a number in front of the bracket, what number is really there? So there's actually a 1 here. So you are going to be taking negative 1 and distributing it into its bracket. So we're going to perform this one step at a time, and we're going to start off with the first bracket and perform the multiplication here. Okay, so let's start with 3m multiplied by m. So we put an equal sign. 3m multiplied by m is 3m squared. Remember that in front of the m, there is a 1. So when you're multiplying, it's 3 times 1, which is 3, and m times m, which is m squared. And then you're going to go to the second set, or the second term, 3m times negative 5, which is going to be negative 15m. Okay, now we're going to move on to the second bracket. And remember, this is going to read as negative 1 multiplied by 2m squared. So let's just start with the numbers. So this is negative 1 times 2, which is negative 2. The m squared is attached, so you're just going to recopy it. Nothing to really do there with the m squared, so recopy it. And then you're going to move on to negative 1 multiplied by negative m. And again, remember that attached to this m, there is a 1 in the front. So really, this is reading as negative 1 multiplied by negative 1. So that would actually give you a positive 1. And there is an m attached, so you also need to recopy the m. Now, do you need to write this 1, or can you simply just state the letter m? Yeah, you don't really have to include this 1. If you do, it's not wrong. It's just in math, we typically don't put in those leading ones. So you could just write m and it would still be correct. All right, now let's take a look at what we've written. Are there any like terms? And I actually see a couple. We have an m squared term here, and we have another m squared term here. We have an m term and another m term. So there are some like terms that we must collect and group together. So remember the rule for how we put our terms in order? The term with the higher exponent value must come first. So if we are comparing m squared and m, 2 is higher than an exponent of 1. So our m squared terms are going to be listed first, followed by just the m terms. So we're going to group together 3m squared minus 2m squared. And then we have just the terms with the m. So that would be negative 15m and the positive m. And now you can perform the math. So 3m squared take away 2m squared is just 1m squared. Again, you don't have to put the 1 in the front. If you'd like to, you can. And then we have negative 15m plus m, which gives us negative 14m. So our final answer is m squared minus 14m. All right, what if we had distributive property with fractions? It's totally possible to get questions like this, and the steps are still the same. We just have to work with some fractions now. Remember that you can use your calculator and enter the fractions into your calculator, which is going to make the math and the steps a lot more simpler. So we're going to begin with this half, and we're going to multiply it into the bracket. So half, or 0.5, times 2w is going to give us 1w. So you could write 1w, or remember, you don't have to include the 1, so you could just leave it as w. And then we move on to half times negative 6. So half times negative 6 is negative 3. Okay, then we're going to move on to the next set. So this reads as negative 2/3, or negative 2 over 3, multiplied by 9w. So in your calculator, if you have it handy, you need to enter negative 2 over 3 as a fraction. Remember to use that ABC fraction button. And you're going to multiply it with 9. And that's actually going to give you negative 6. Now remember, the w is attached, so you also need to attach a w to your negative 6. And then you're going to do negative 2 over 3 multiplied by negative 6. So negative 2 over 3 multiplied by negative 6, if you put that into your calculator, gives you a positive 4. All right, so if we look at our terms, we do have some like terms that can get grouped together. So I'm going to group together all my W's. So that's a W, take away 6W. And then I'm going to put in all my plain numbers. So that would be the -3 and the +4. And now we can perform the math. So we've got 1W, take away 6W, and that's going to give us -5W. And then we have -3 plus 4. -3 plus 4 is a +1. So our final answer is -5W plus 1. Our final question is probably the hardest question out of all of the examples that we've looked at in today's lesson. And it is a question that has a bracket nested inside of another bracket. So before we've only seen one bracket kind of at a time, and we focused on just one multiplication at a time. But now you've got a bracket sandwiched inside another bracket. So the best way to approach a question like this is to just focus on the innermost bracket first. So in this particular question, that is the brackets that are the round brackets. And then we'll worry about the rest of it after. So with the round set of brackets, we have a 5 directly in front of it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to distribute the 5 into this bracket first. And then we'll worry about the other numbers and the other square brackets that we see. So what we're going to do is we're going to put an equal sign. We're going to recopy the 3. We're going to recopy the square bracket. We're going to recopy the 2. And then we're going to start with the multiplication. So this is 5 multiplied by 2k. 5 times 2k is a positive 10k. And then we have 5 multiplied by -1. 5 times -1 is -5. And then we can close the bracket. Now, it doesn't matter if you use square brackets or round brackets, as long as you have the brackets. Okay, so a couple things you could choose to do here. You could multiply or distribute the 3 into every term inside the bracket. Or you can choose to first check and see if there are any like terms that you can collect inside this bracket. So I'm going to distribute, and then I'll collect my like terms if there are any at the very end. So what you need to distribute now is the 3 into every term inside this large bracket. So we're going to put another equal sign. And then we're going to multiply one at a time. So we're going to start with 3 multiplied by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then we have 3 multiplied by 10k. 3 times 10k is positive 30k. And then finally we have 3 times -5. 3 times -5 is -15. All right, our final step is to check and see if there are any like terms. So are there any numbers that can be put together? And there are. We've got a plain 6 and a plain 15. No variables attached to them means that they are like terms. 30k, it's got a k attached to it, but there are no other terms that have k's. So the 30k is on its own, and we're going to put that first. All right, then we would have the +6 or the +6, and then we have the -15 or the -15. So we're going to do 6 take away 15, or a +6 take away 15. So we're going to recopy the 30k. Nothing you can do with that, so just recopy it. And then we have 6 take away 15. 6 take away 15 is -9. So your final answer is going to be 30k take away 9.